Every conversation I'm talking to a new prospect, I want to understand in their words what their goals are.
Okay, welcome back to the Marketing Playbook presented by Extend and Ebo. Here you'll take away 3 game-winning marketing plays every episode to take back to your team. I'm your host, Mark Friedman, and my career has been focused on direct-to-consumer marketing, direct mail, physical retail, and digital commerce. This is episode number 122, and my guest is Trevor Testwuide. Trevor is the CEO and co-founder of Measured, a company that helps brands measure and optimize their media spend. A mechanical engineer by training, Trevor has had a fascinating career in technical sales and in media mix optimization. This was an interesting show for me because as a marketer, throughout my career, the challenge of where to spend marketing dollars with the greatest return on that investment has always been a question. Before we get started, a quick thank you as always to Max Brandstetter of the Wild Business Growth Podcast for producing this episode. You can reach him at max@maxpodcasting.com to help bring your podcast to life. Let's open the playbook. Ready, break. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Marketing Playbook podcast. Today, I'm joined by Trevor Testwuide. Trevor is the CEO and co-founder of Measured, the pioneer and leader of incrementality-based media measurement for portfolio optimization. Prior to founding Measured in 2017, Trevor was the CEO and co-founder of Conversion Logic, a leading algorithmic multi-touch attribution company. He spent the last 15 years immersed in the cross-channel media measurement category and his 25-year career building and growing enterprise technology companies. He's a seasoned executive and entrepreneur and an expert in cross-channel marketing measurement. He's worked with Fortune 500 companies and emerging brands across retail, e-commerce, financial services, auto, entertainment, and CPG in North America and globally. Trevor earned an MBA from the University of Southern California and holds a degree in mechanical engineering from Santa Clara University. Trevor, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mark. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And you get the benefit, or I don't know if it's benefit, but you're the first mechanical engineer I've had on my podcast.
Okay, terrific. Out of 121, that surprises me. Excellent.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
You would think that somewhere along the line, somebody would be a
You
mechanical
would
engineer.
think in our orbit. Yes. Yeah.
Let's talk your first story. We start the show here all the time trying to get the guests' first story, how they grew up, how that upbringing might have suggested that your career would take the shape that it has.
Sure. I thought I'd share a rather humorous anecdote with you, and then I'll share a little bit on my upbringing. Maybe an early signal that I land where I am today. When I was in third grade, my folks attended a parent-teacher conference, and the teacher expressed to my mother and father, when providing feedback on me, the third grader, I guess you're 8 or 9 in third grade, that I was headed in one of 2 directions in life. In the words of Sister Mary at St. Mel's in the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, she said, your child is either going to end up in prison or will be the CEO of a company someday, with a straight face. And she meant it. And my mother loves to tell this story now, given I fortunately chose path number 2. But when I've talked to her about it, I can suppose that teacher experienced me to have a tremendous energy. I challenged everything, including authority. I was ambitious and curious and confident. And I think my mother's interpretation was she was signaling to my folks, pay attention to this kid. I've always been a very curious person. I've always challenged what people told me I could not do. And maybe that's a reason I've gone so headstrong into one of marketing's most difficult problems in the cross-channel marketing measurement category and lived here for the last 15 years. I've always loved a challenge. I've always been turned on by solving hard problems. Probably start with a mechanical engineering degree. And doing things people told me I could not do. So I'm sure there's a behavioral psychologist that can unpack quite a bit there. But there's a humorous anecdote. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good story. I like the fact also, and we have listeners of all ages and sets of experience. And oftentimes I'm asked by folks, should I go back and get an MBA? Is it worth it? Will it be, play out? I see more and more folks that were engineers also taking on an MBA. What was the impetus for you to do that?
Yeah, for me, the MBA was a really important milestone in my trajectory. I got a technical degree and a mechanical engineering degree at Santa Clara University. I started down a technical path right out of college, and it was a bit of a career transition opportunity to spring in the direction that I wanted to go. My first job out of college was with a company called Telecommunications Techniques Corporation, where I was in the test and measurement category within the telecom industry. And it was a time when companies didn't make meaningful investments into college grads, but I spent the first year living in a Hampton Inn in Germantown, Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C. Essentially got like a master's in telco engineering and sales training. And 6, 7 years into that job, and it was clear to me that I was going to head down a more kind of business-oriented path and didn't get a lot of the classic kind of finance and core business training in my undergrad. And it was clear that that would be a good step for me. So proved to be, I would say that that was a really important milestone in my career trajectory.
And early on in your career, there were a number of sales positions. What was it that drew you to sales? I mean, you had a technology background, and now you were going to sell for the companies you were working in.
Graduated with a mechanical engineering degree. It was a class of probably 32, 33, and I was the sellout in my class going down a sales engineer path. And there was one other in my class that went to Accenture. But I had a couple ME internships during undergrad. It was clear to me I didn't want to be sitting behind a CAD terminal and doing the traditional ME job. And so I was exploring other career paths, got turned on by the sales engineer path. It was still a very technical, consultative role, much less of kind of your traditional sale and more of a very consultative enterprise style sale. And that really has been where I've spent my career. It feels less of like a sale and more of you've got a pain and a problem, and I may or may not have a solution, but let's collaborate through it and see if I do. And so that was really where I started my career. Then into the MBA, and coming out of MBA, that's really where I got turned on and down the entrepreneurial path, right? It turned on my entrepreneurial fire. And so I tinkered with a few things. It was clear to me I was not going to go work for the big company. I was at what became JDS Uniphase, which is a big publicly traded, telecom company. It was clear I was not going to go back in that direction. I had an interest in working with smaller companies and a desire to at some point start my own. And so I was tinkering with a few things, and a good friend of mine had just raised a Series A in advertising technology in the digital out-of-home category. It was called Ripple Networks. It was 2005. And he gave me an opportunity to come in and turn revenue on for that digital out-of-home network that he was building. And so he essentially kind of started and launched me into advertising, I guess, 20 years ago. We were putting TVs in coffee shops and private airports and destinations where people queued up, right, and lined up, and we could entertain them with closed loop programming and monetize with advertising. And my role was focused on turning on the revenue engine. So I quickly learned about the agency landscape and selling advertising. And, we were a young team, first time entrepreneurs learning and definitely on our maturity curve there. Spent a couple years there and left there to join a team of veteran entrepreneurs building a software platform called Seesaw Networks. I don't know if you're ever exposed to Seesaw, but it was led by a really amazing software entrepreneur. His name was Monty Wieben. He was the founder of Blue Martini Software. You may remember Blue Martini. And he had a small startup called Seesaw, and he was aggregating this fragmented digital out-of-home category, pulling all of the inventory across this disparate collection of networks together. And I joined him and the team really to learn from them. And I ended up spending 4 or 5 years selling digital at home media. I quickly learned how difficult it was to prove ROI, right? And prove that, let's say, non-endemic advertising on retail media, prove that it was driving outcomes, right, with our digital at home ad product. And so I was always very hungry for good measurement, pushed hard for it. That's kind of where these two came together. I started my career in measurement 6, 7 years, and then ended up in advertising technology. And I ended up finding and was presented an opportunity to join an emerging startup in Visual IQ back in 2011. And that's when I got into this category.
All right. So hold that thought. You meant you had a couple of names in there.
Yeah.
Beyond those folks, have you had any other significant mentors or, significant people that influenced your direction or the way you thought about control, having your own business?
I've been very fortunate to have quite a few mentors along the way, and many people helping me along my career trajectory. When you ask this question, the one person that floats to the top would be my father. I think someone that I've always, from the beginning and still do today, hold in high regard. He is we just celebrated his 77th birthday a couple weeks ago. Lucky he's still in great shape and active and very close to my life, but as a young kid and being the oldest to three, I think my folks were mid-20s right when they had me. So they're learning. And they were very on top of me and my interests and my talents and strengths. And both my mother and father were very close in guiding me. My dad was keen to keep me distracted from the mischief that I could be exposed to in Los Angeles, and having me deeply involved in sports, right? I grew up playing all the sports. I played a lot of tennis and basketball and baseball, but he was also acutely aware of where my strengths were academically, and that those strengths were oriented more towards kind of math and science. And he directed me to double down in those areas, which ultimately resulted in me choosing mechanical engineering at Santa Clara, and me heading down a path into technology. And he's always been a sounding board and a source of wisdom along my career, was early and throughout, and is today. So I've been fortunate. Yeah, there's been quite a few, but he's the clear one that I would point out.
That's great. We'll have to make sure that you show your dad, if he doesn't
Yeah.
know how to listen to the podcast and and listen to the show.
I will send the link his way. Yes.
Marketers, we all know that customer relationship doesn't end at checkout. Building a real and meaningful relationship starts after purchase. That's where Extend comes in. Extend's suite of post-purchase solutions keeps your customers happy and coming back for more. With Extend, retailers can set up custom rules and workflows to handle shipping issues, fulfillment errors, returns, and exchanges through a dynamic, branded experience, saving you time and money. Extend's integrated fraud mitigation technology helps identify and stop bad actors before they impact your bottom line, with no agent intervention. Extend also provides unique value-added services like product and shipping protection that can help you drive additional revenue while offsetting the financial risk of these various post-purchase issues. And best of all, customers love Extend. With a 96% CSAT score and 61% average boost in LTV, you'll have happier customers, fewer headaches, and more repeat sales. Visit extend.com to see how you can up-level your post-purchase strategy today. Let's talk about Conversion Logic. So you were co-founder there. Maybe set the scene for when you founded that business. And to your point earlier, what problem were you trying to solve, and who was asking you for help to solve it?
I got into the categories I mentioned with Visual IQ in 2011, and that is where I got really turned on by the promise of this technology and the application and just the huge implications that it could have for marketers. When I say this technology, I'm referring to the dream of user-level deterministic multi-touch attribution, right? And that value prop was very exciting to me back in 2011 and 12, 13, early innings. So I spent four years there I had worked for a number of early stage companies, right? From Ripple into Seesaw. When I joined VIQ, it was a seed state. They just raised a seed round, and I learned a lot. And I felt like I was ready to take the leap and go for it on my own. So I founded Conversion Logic. We were really a second mover in the MTA category. That was 2014.
So MTA, for those that might not be initiated, MTA
Is multi-touch attribution. So the methodology where you are deterministically tracking a user's media exposures events, whether they are impressions or clicks across platforms, online and offline, to some transaction, building a path of those events at the user level, applying a visual IQ. They were really the pioneer in algorithmic attribution, so applying algorithms to inform fractional attribution to assign credit where credit was due. And so that was the focus and application of conversion logic.
I do a lot of these shows and talking to people that, are clients, not necessarily clients of yours, but would be clients of yours. And we kid around oftentimes that I don't like to talk about the A word, the attribution
Yeah.
word, because it's so hard to discuss. But I'm glad we've got somebody with your expertise on the show to really set it straight for us. So I'm a retailer. I am spending my money in lots of different places. How do you, we'll get to measured in a second, but just in general, how does an MTA model or an MTA analysis help me make better sense of where my spend is going?
Well, the goal of MTA was to help marketers move off of last touch attribution. So last click or last touch, where the marketer is using the platform's last touch point, assigning 100% credit to that last touch point. And that's how measurement is done. Multi-touch attribution is a fractional methodology where you are trying to build a path of media exposures across these platforms and fractionally attributing credit based on the contribution to that outcome, whether it is an e-com sale, a retail sale, it could be a subscription, whatever that transaction is you're trying to drive to. It was a path building methodology, deterministically mapping users across these platforms, online and offline, is really the holy grail of measurement. And it was a dream that I chased down from 2011 to 2000, end of 2016. There was a point in time where we could kind of sort of land it, right? And I could map users from YouTube to Facebook to a search click to a conversion. And then in 2016, there's a lot of things that were happening in our industry that were making that a really impossible exercise in the name of walled gardens and the privacy era and cookies going away and that was a methodology many of us went after. In fact, this team here at Measure, I guess we'll talk about in a second, but we're a veteran team that's probably deployed as much multi-touch attribution as probably any team out there. A lot of scars and learnings to show for it.
When I'm sitting there as the marketer, one of the things that's interesting to me, and you'll tell me if you agree or not, as time has progressed, and I've been at this for a while. My first opportunity in digital was in 2000 at Brooks Brothers, and then it was somewhat simple. We had Yahoo. There was no Google, really at the time. There were not a lot of channels yet to fight for the attribution. And we didn't even know that the word attribution existed back then. And then as there have been more channels and people get more sophisticated, it's seemingly gotten more complex to use an MTA because of all the different touch points that a customer could have. True? And how are you dealing with that?
True. And the data collection and mapping users deterministically across these platforms has really gotten impossible. So while we chased that dream down, we kind of threw the towel in at the end of 2016 and took measured down a different path, right? So that last click or last touch methodology has been around really since the beginning of digital, and it's still a dominant form of measurement today, and there's reasons why it's still around. It's very simple. Like every platform assigning 100% credit to their last touch point before the conversion. Simple, easy to track, easy to operationalize at scale. It's certainly familiar because it's been around since the very early days of digital marketing. Easy to adopt, but it is fundamentally and radically flawed. And I don't think anyone would debate that today, not even the platforms, by the way.
And one of the things, and better coming from you, the expert, one of the reasons why it's not optimal is because that last click gives benefit to bottom of funnel tactics. So if I'm doing brand awareness on Meta, I'm not nearly getting any value for that, even though we know there's some halo effect, right?
That's right. So you have media that's really good at capturing demand at the bottom of the funnel and harvesting that demand. So an example would be something like retargeting. You have people on your site. They are demonstrating awareness and intent, and they're leaned in. And then you follow them around and serve them ads until they convert. Do they deserve 100% credit for that retargeting exposure when they're sitting at the bottom of the funnel and harvesting that demand that's created further up the funnel? Absolutely not. That is the mission here at Measured is to understand what is that incremental marginal contribution of media, regardless of where it is in the funnel, high funnel, mid funnel, low funnel, and retargeting when it's tipping it in, so to speak. How much credit does it deserve? Does it deserve 5% credit, 10% credit, 15%? We are now informing that through a modern methodology that is much more trusted in today's reality.
You mentioned the company Measured. You've been a co-founder of that business, I guess, for 8 years or so now. Is that
That's
right?
right. Yeah, yeah, a little over 8 years, February 2017. Yeah,
So many brands that I see know that last click is not optimal.
yeah.
Yet, for all the reasons you mentioned, they stick with it. Why don't more brands, do you think, forget about whether they come to Measured or not, but why aren't more brands looking for alternatives to simple last click out of GA or any of the other analytics tools that they use?
So I think by and large, everyone recognizes that the last click methodology is flawed. They recognize that measuring non-Google media with GA is flawed, but you still see many $25 million budgets still anchoring on it. There's most people now recognize, I think, that multi-touch attribution is also dangerous and flawed. There's a lot of inertia around these methodologies, and they have been organizationally adopted, especially the last touch methodology. And so it's quite disruptive when you are asking everyone in the business who's consuming marketing performance reporting to now switch to intercurrency, right? It's not just marketing, but it is finance, it is C-suite, it is board reporting, there's period over period reporting. And so there's change pain institutionally to move to what everyone sees as a much more informed metric. But it takes a lot of work and executive sponsorship to get there. The juice is worth the squeeze, though. We have so many proof points of that being the case.
And so when you forge a relationship with a client and perhaps they come, they're sophisticated enough to know what they're doing today is not optimal, they come to you. How does the engagement kind of start? What are you responsible for? What are they responsible for? And I guess maybe take it full suite. What's the output? Right? What are you going to provide to them that they're going to use to potentially change the way they're spending their money?
Every conversation, I'm talking to a new prospect. I want to understand in their words what their goals are. I always ask the question, if we're going to work together and we're 6 months into the engagement and we meet 6 months in and we have crushed it for you, what does that look like? Talk me through that. And this is fundamentally what that is. So we're helping brands understand media's contribution to business outcomes for the purpose of full portfolio media optimization. So for reporting, media optimization, planning, and buying. And the problem that we have been laser focused on and are laser focused on for marketers is referred to media incrementality. And media incrementality defined as a business outcome driven by a marketing tactic that would not have occurred otherwise without the media exposure. Okay, so the question that we answer is, what is the true causal impact of a marketing tactic on a business outcome? Most everyone knows this. The media platforms have these conversion optimization algorithms that are really good at finding people with baked and loaded intent, people that are on a path to conversion. And the platforms are really good at inserting an ad in front of that conversion and taking credit for it. They're great at finding people with intent, and a lot of those people are converting with or without the media stimulation. Now, brands come to us frustrated, knowing that reality, frustrated they're making high stakes media investment decisions on big, multi-million dollar budgets with that methodology, and they want to get off these dangerously wrong metrics. We are a technology platform, but we also show up as a partner to help them along that journey.
Want to make your customer journey more valuable? Meet Ebo, an all-in-one loyalty solutions provider that helps brands build stronger connections and drive significant revenue outcomes. With Ebo's loyalty ecosystem, brands can build custom programs, including paid programs, engagement, and tiered experiences that meet customers where they are and take them where they want them to go. Ready to increase engagement, enhance monetization, and maximize revenue? Visit ebo.com today. Ebo, one loyalty ecosystem, limitless growth. Again, back to being the marketer, if I was thinking about your comment, what does success look like? Media optimization, there's lots of buzzwords in there. At the end of the day, I'm coming to you, I think, with the desire to spend my money more efficiently, either spend less dollars to drive the same revenue or to redeploy the same dollars to drive more revenue. Is that kind of the two ways that people are thinking about it?
That's exactly right. And doing it across the full funnel of media with an understanding of how incremental it is to their business transactions. So their omni-channel transactions. That's exactly right.
Do you find it easier or more challenging when there are more channels that a client plays in, and or whether the spend is greater?
So that's a good thing for us. We engage when brands start to spend north of $10 million in paid media. A lot of times, you're spending $3, $5, $7 million. You get really good at one or two channels, and you ride those channels hard. And then eventually, you start to wonder: have I pushed them too far? What does the diminishing return curve look like on these? And they start to have an interest in diversification, and where else can they find that third channel, fourth channel to drive scale. That's when measures value properly starts to hunt.
Are you able to help brands that maybe are playing, they've got their own direct to consumer, but they're also playing in Amazon? There's this belief that, I can spend in D2C. I can't measure it necessarily, but there's a halo effect on my sales happening on Amazon and vice versa.
As long as we have access to the transaction. So the spend requirement is the first component. The second component is we need access to transaction data, whether that is first party or third party. First party, e-com, owned and operated retail, that is the easiest, most accessible, kind of right in our wheelhouse that we do every day. Measuring to third party outcomes like Amazon or Sephora or Target, as long as we have access to the transaction and we can collect that transaction in a timely way, preferably automated daily, and we can line up to it, we can measure to it. Wholesale, especially the long tail of wholesale, gets very tricky, right? If you think about boutiques and convenience stores and that longer tail. So we're typically focused on first party and then third party outcomes where they're accessible.
What about retailers, brands that may have their own D2C, but they also have stores, right? One of the questions is I have had, is there some halo effect on stores from the digital ad spend? Are you able to help them understand that part of their business?
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to when I refer to owned and operated retail. So that is their first party store. That is right in our bread and butter, and we do a lot of that. So measuring the relationship between paid media against e-com, retail in an owned and operated capacity, and then potentially Amazon, Sephora, as long as we have access to that. We'll set up an experiment against multiple KPIs. So let's understand the effectiveness of, let's say, TikTok or a meta awareness campaign against all of those conversion types with the same experiment.
I want to make sure that I'm catching this one. I've always thought, and I haven't been able to ever really prove this, is that I spend $1 to drive traffic to a website. Maybe I get $3 back in revenue. And so my ROAS would be 3, and let's leave out whether we're looking at CAC and ACOS and other things. But that dollar of spend might not only be contributing $3 to my business, it might be another buck or two that's driving traffic in store. But most brands don't seem to be tracking that revenue that goes to store. And now, without getting too heavy in the math, it's not really $1 driving 3, it could be $1 driving 5. So is that part of what you're helping with?
100%. Yes, that's exactly where we live. And it's, I saw a read recently where TikTok, it looked terrible against their e-com transactions, but when we brought in Amazon, it was crushing it on Amazon. And so while it was a cut when you look at it independently against e-com, it was scale up when you added e-com and Amazon together.
Okay, great. There's lots of measurement methodologies that are available, in the market. Google and Meta have both promoted triangulation as best-in-class measurements. From your point of view, how are leading brands evolving the way that they triangulate between MMM and attribution and incrementality testing?
Yeah, so this is a really great question. And the reality today, and we're Q2 2025, we just stepped in April of 2025. What we see is that most brands do not have a clear, unified, singular media measurement strategy to drive the business. We see the more sophisticated brands that are bringing together multiple methodologies. They have a collection of disparate measurement methodologies informing different signals of performance. So they may have a media mix model running. They may be doing some incrementality testing. They may have an attribution workflow. Maybe they're getting some surveys. Someone's looking at Google Analytics. More often than not, what we see is like a hodgepodge, like a collection of things. And what happens with this buffet of signals is human nature. We bias towards the answer we like. That answer that best supports maybe a narrative that they've been promoting internally or they've sold across the organization. They cherry pick a methodology that's most convenient, and it's not exactly measurement. We would say that's measurement theater, right? And so the leading brands are moving beyond that. They're looking to the models that they most trust, and they're asking, where am I getting my most trusted signal? And then how do we integrate that together into a single consistent system that guides how we optimize our portfolio? So we have a North Star, right, to guide investment decisions. And then they line up really smart, trusted measurement against that North Star. That's the unlock. We observe a lot of teams now, finally today, starting to anchor on the causal ground truth of media performance, which is incrementality, right? And then they'll take that causal signal from an incrementality experiment and now using it to train media mix models for planning and forecasting, getting to a one unified and consistent foundation to drive media investment decisions. So it's evolving right now, and we see it's a bit messy often when we step in.
But for those that are listening that are marketers and they want to be more data driven, but they kind of feel overwhelmed, how should they tackle their job?
First, I would say you don't need to become a data scientist overnight to be data driven, right? In fact, the most important first step is just a mindset shift of getting curious. Start with asking questions, better questions on what's working. And then how do I know it's working? right? And let those questions drive your exploration. It's really easy in this advanced measurement category, especially this cross-channel analytics category, to boil the ocean, right? So narrow the scope. A lot of marketers, they get stuck because they try to do it all and they want to look across the entire omni-channel landscape and all of their media channels and all their KPIs. Instead, start with one conversion type. Like if it's Amazon you're most interested in, or e-com or retail, and then start with a channel that is both very important to you and you're most curious about, and then design a test and learn agenda to get a read. And then you audit and you tune and you optimize and get smarter, and you build a test and learn journey to really, really tune that channel. So narrow your scope, keep it simple, take a deep breath, and lean on partners where it makes sense, right? You don't have to go it alone. There's a lot of partners who have gone deep on solving these very thorny problems, and lean on their experience. Yeah.
That's great. Good advice there. I really, I like that. All right, we are down to the last 2 minutes of the show. We do a 2-minute drill, 7 questions, 1-word answer. Are you ready, Trevor?
Let's do it.
Okay, a brand that you admire or that inspires you.
I'd still go with Apple.
Favorite app on your phone.
Nana. I have 2 little ones at home.
Last website other than Amazon that you shopped from.
Tony's. My daughter loves her Tony's box.
Something that you're not good at but wish that you were.
Speaking more languages.
Charitable organization that you're passionate about.
St. Jude's Children's Hospital.
If you had one superpower, what would it be?
Teleportation.
And other than family, what's your most prized possession?
Can I say my 16-year-old kitty, Pepe?
All right, there you go. Call out for Pepe. There you go. Trevor, if people would like to reach out to you on social media, where's the best place to do so?
Find me on LinkedIn, or you can reach me through our website at measured.com.
Okay, great. Hey, this was really interesting stuff. It is meaty, as you said, but I think you explained well not only what you guys do and kind of the problem that you're helping companies solve. So thanks for the time. Nice to see you again, and we'll catch up again soon.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
That's it. Today's game ball goes to Trevor Testwuide for coming on the Marketing Playbook. To me, today's 3 game-winning marketing plays were as follows. Number 1, mentorship. Everyone needs a mentor, whether it be a relative, as Trevor mentioned, his dad, or a friend, or someone with whom you work. Seek out people that can help you think through decisions, deal with tough times, or share with you the good times. I've had several career and personal mentors in my life, and without them, I don't believe that I could have become the person that I have. And number 2, you don't need to become a data scientist overnight to be data-driven. That's a direct quote from Trevor. This is so true. It also really starts with a mindset of being curious and asking the questions. How do I know that what I'm doing is working? Should I be changing my approach? And if so, how? As I say on the close of the show, the devil is in the details. So while you're trying to look at the big picture, sometimes you just need to be in the weeds. And number 3, Trevor's work is all about media incrementality, and that's the measure of dollars you spend that are driving some action. We know that each business has a portion of their revenue that would happen without media spend. That might decline over time without that spend, but you really need to know as best as possible which dollars are driving a sales outcome and how to lean into those tactics and pull back on others. Thank you, Playbook marketers, for listening to another episode. If you want to check out more pages of the Marketing Playbook, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast spot and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, the devil is in the details.